Hi everyone, there's a lot of anticipation for the release of Marvel Animation's new animated series X-Men 97, which is continuing the success of the classic cartoon. In fact, some products related to the series have already been released well before the premiere, and they've already given us several spoilers. Among them, two toys drew attention by revealing that an iconic character from Marvel Comics who wasn't part of the original series will have an important role in the plot. That character is Madelyne Pryor, also known as the Goblin Queen, and her inclusion came as a surprise to many. But who is this figure who was once allied with the X-Men but then became a villain? And why is she so similar to Jean Grey? Today I've brought you 8 relevant facts about the Goblin Queen and her connection to X-Men 97. Let's dive into the complex and twist-filled story of one of the most memorable and tragic characters in the X-Men universe. Before we continue, remember to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like to stay updated. Your likes and subscriptions help our project grow. And with the growth of the project, I can bring more interesting videos to you. Deal? Thanks for your support. 8. Madelyne Pryor's first time showing up in Marvel Comics was in 1983 in issue 168 of Uncanny X-Men. She was a cargo pilot, and Scott Summers, best known as Cyclops, met her while visiting his parents in Alaska. At that time, Scott was still recovering from the loss of Jean Grey, who had sacrificed herself after becoming Dark Phoenix. Madelyne was notable for her uncanny resemblance to Jean. It was as though they were twin sisters. Scott fell in love with her immediately. It wasn't long before the two of them began a relationship, and Scott introduced her to the X-Men. In one episode, Scott and Madelyne got married, and with this, Cyclops left the X-Men, passing leadership to Storm. Author Chris Claremont had in mind that Madelyne would be Scott's happy ending after Jean Grey's death, but as already expected, happy endings rarely are a part of X-Men stories. 7. Madelyne Pryor, Jean Grey, and Cyclops. When Scott and Madelyne left the X-Mansion in issue 201 of the 1000 X-Men, they just welcomed their son, Nathan Christopher Charlie Summers. However, their peace of mind as first-time parents didn't last long. Jean Grey was found alive. Turns out that the Phoenix that died was actually a cosmic entity that had duplicated Jean's conscience and memories while her body recovered at the bottom of the ocean. Upon hearing that Jean was alive, Cyclops immediately went to meet her to witness it with his own eyes. Madelyne made it clear that if he went after the past, he did not need to go back. Cyclops then reunited with the other 4 original X-Men in the X-Factor group. Shortly after that, Madelyne and little Nathan were attacked by the mercenary marauders in the service of the villainous Mr. Sinister. When Scott returned to get his family, he found no trace of them. Although the X-Men rescued Madelyne, Nathan remained missing. After a heroic sacrifice by the X-Men to save the world, the goddess Roma revived them. They decided to keep the world thinking that they had died, and Madelyne joined them at a secret base in the Australian outback. There she became close to her brother-in-law Alex, known as Havoc. When Madelyne saw on TV that Scott had gone back to Jean, anger consumed her. That fury caught the attention of the demon Sin, who offered her great power. She accepted and used this sinister new power in her desperate search to find Nathan. This is the truth about Madelyne Pryor's origins. It was during this period that Madelyne discovered the truth about who she really was. Mr. Sinister, a scientist obsessed with genetics, has always had a special interest in the Summers and Grey's lineage. He had a theory that the son of Scott Summers and Jim Grey would be an Omega-level mutant. With Jim transformed into Phoenix and the possibility of her leaving Earth, Sinister saw his plans threatened. That's when he decided to create a clone of Jean from a tissue sample of hers. Initially, the clone showed no powers and was left in incubation. However, Dark Phoenix's death unleashed a spark of power that awakened the clone. Brought to life and now conscious, Sinister implanted false memories and the identity of Madelyne Pryor in the clone, a name ironically chosen by him to allude to his previous life. He put her to work with Scott's grandparents, knowing that when he found her, Cyclops would fall in love with her, convinced that she was the image of his lost love. However, after Nathan's birth and the return of the real Jean, Sinister saw Madelyne as a disposable pawn in his plans and ordered his marauders to eliminate her. The discovery that her entire existence was a sham sent Madelyne further down a dark path. 5. Madelyne Pryor becomes the Goblin Queen. Losing her mind, she sided with Demon Lord Enistreet during one of the X-Men's defining events, Inferno. By taking on the title of Goblin Queen, she caused unprecedented chaos in New York, turning the city into a living hell. During this incident, she almost sacrificed her own son Nathan to the demonic entities. This extreme behavior had two motives. First, to get back at Cyclops, and second, as retaliation against Sinister, who had only used her for reproduction. By the end of this saga, both the X-Men and X-Factor had managed to contain Madelyne. At a crucial moment, she used her newly discovered telepathic power to establish a connection with Jean Grey, believing that if she died, Jean would also perish. Madelyne dies, but Jean survives, and the Phoenix Force makes its return. Additionally, Madelyne's memories were transferred onto Jim, leading Jim to inherit Madelyne's maternal love for Nathan. And so for quite some time, it was believed that this had been the end of Madelyne Pryor's journey. 4. Madelyne Pryor, her son Cable. The son of Madelyne, Scott, and Nathan was raised by Scott and Jim Grey. However, this new family setup didn't last long. The lethal mutant apocalypse infected little Nathan with a techno-organic virus, putting his life in danger. In an attempt to save the boy, he was sent far into the future with the hope that the advanced medicine of that age might heal him, and it worked. Later on, we found out that the cyborg mercenary Cable, leader of X-Force, was in fact adult Nathan Summers, who had time-traveled back to his own era of origin. Years passed and an alternative version of Nathan from the timeline known as Age of Apocalypse appeared in reality half-heartedly. Nate was a powerful telepath who was free of the virus that infected Cable. He was able to rescue Madelyne's spirit on the astral plane, giving her a new chance at life, possibly in search of a maternal connection. Interestingly, the two started a love relationship, which is somewhat odd considering that genetically Madelyne would be something like Nate's aunt. This Madelyne joined the Hellfire Club, taking on the position of Black Rook, not being able to recall many events from her past life, possibly because Jean Grey had absorbed her memories. Over time, she regained her memories and reached an understanding with Cable, her son, even though he had some reservations about the fact that she had tried to sacrifice him as a child. Yes, family relationships can be rather complex. At the end, Madelyne disintegrated again on the astral plane. 3. In the modern era of the X-Men, Madelyne Pryor reappeared once again from the astral plane and led the Brotherhood of Mutants. However, there is a question as to whether this was really her or a Jean Grey from another dimension posing as Madelyne. The real Madelyne has recently returned thanks to resurrection protocols on the mutant island of Krakoa. She was able to make amends with Jean Grey, who shared with her memories of the time she spent raising Nathan, Madelyne's son. Madelyne reprised her role as Queen of the Goblins, returning control of Limbo, and even formed her own version of the Dark X-Men. 2. The powers of the Goblin Queen. Madelyne, even though she is a clone of Jean Grey and initially appeared like an ordinary human, possesses the same powers as her genetic model, possibly because of her accelerated development in the laboratory. Her powers took a long time to manifest, not appearing in adolescence as is common. Over time, she not only gained Jean's telepathic and telekinetic abilities, but also incorporated Celine the mutant's teleportation ability. However, because she developed these powers later in adulthood, her psychic abilities never reached Jean's intensity. But by taking up the mantle of the Goblin Queen, Madelyne acquired magical powers, making her formidable in a way Jean never experienced. 1. Connection to X-Men 97. We learned some time ago that Madelyne Pryor would appear in X-Men 97 thanks to Marvel Lens figures from Hasbro and Funko Pop. In episode 2 we get a glimpse of how she fits into the storyline with an ending that hits you. The X-Men had barely finished welcoming Jean and little Nathan to the X-Mansion when another woman claiming to be Jean Grey showed up. The big question now is, which among them is the real Jean Grey? If the series decides to follow the comics, this newcomer who appears worn out and exhausted must be the real Jean. It's possible that we'll find out the real Jean was replaced by a clone at some earlier point in the series, perhaps during the Dark Phoenix saga in season 3. Jean could have managed to escape captivity and return, only to find a clone in her place. On the other hand, the animated series could take a different direction from the source material. The woman who arrived could be Madelyne Pryor. Maybe she was able to escape Sinister's lab and went to the X-Men, unaware that all her memories about the group were implanted. Leave your ideas and questions in the comments. I'd love to discuss the video's topics. If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Suggestions for the next videos are appearing above now. It makes complete sense for you to watch them. See you in the next video. See you later. What's up?